Well, up next here on Influence Living, we're going to meet Rita. Now, Rita is an American now living in Israel. She has quite a story. She believes that Jesus Christ is the Messiah or the Son of God. Here's her story.
I was born in 1952 in New York City, actually in Brooklyn, where my grandparents and great-grandparents had immigrated from Russia, from the area, Lithuania, from Eastern Europe. I think the borders have all changed by now. So it was at that time, a very typical Jewish family growing up in the 50s. So many, like my parents, had come out from New York and into Long Island, where I actually grew up. So as you know, the world of the late 60s began to explode, is the only way I could put it. The cities were exploding with fighting, and I'm speaking of American cities, because of the race riots, the assassinations of Martin Luther King, of Robert Kennedy. Of course, when I was a child, it was John Kennedy, but later in the late 60s, you had this intense, almost we versus they. We were the ones who opposed the government. We opposed the Vietnam War. We opposed everything the government stood for. And when these men who we believed in were killed, the anger and the rage exploded all over America. And being part of that, I could only see what was wrong with my nation. I didn't appreciate the things I appreciate today, the democracy, the freedom that we had to protest. So when I was 17 years old, a very significant event happened that the whole world heard about in 1969, which was Woodstock. And that was a defining moment for our generation, because at that time, as we gathered in this muddy place, walking miles and miles in the mud, to our own, in a sense, gods with a small g, gods of music and of looking at this generation of who were doing outrageous things, we said, yes, we are somebody. Hundreds of thousands of young people gathered there. And finally, I went back to Boston and hitchhiked part of the way, ended up on I don't know how in the world I was able to get back there, probably borrowed some money. And it was a very cold winter of 1973. And that day I was just standing on the side of the road, and I said, I don't know if it was God, but somebody, send me a woman to pick me up. I didn't want to have to deal with talking to men And within 10 seconds, a little blue Volkswagen pulled over. And that was the era of bumper stickers, the 70s. And on the back of her car, it said, Christ died for your sins. Now remember, I had no relationship with Christ, and still to this day I much prefer to call him Messiah, but that was what, of course, the world called him, the Christian world. And guess who's coming again? 2 bumper stickers. I just got in her car and I said, is he really coming? Now I don't know what made me connect the Christ that was on her bumper sticker with the Messiah of my longing. Because again, that is a very Christian way of understanding who he is. It's a Greek word. And I had said earlier I had no connection, but something made me ask her, is he really coming? And the truth that he is, she turned around to me and she said, yes, he is. And I had never in my life heard about the Messiah being Jesus, or who I prefer to call Yeshua by his Hebrew name, which means salvation, that he had come and was coming again. The Messiah that I longed for as a child had nothing to do with this Messiah. So this woman tells me that the Messiah is coming. I still remember she's beautiful, clear blue eyes. She actually had been a hippie drummer in San Francisco in a previous way of life. True and living faith was not something I knew. But I did know at that moment in 1973 that there was a God who gave his only son for me and loved me. On Yom Kippur, we have hundreds of sins we go through. You only need to say one: forgive me that I have pursued my own way and not yours, Lord. And come into my life. Cleanse me by the blood that you shed for me. It's so hard. But as we look and we know the temple, with the temple of all those years ago, thousands of years ago, that we always had a sacrifice. And you can say, Yeshua, you are my sacrifice. And thank you for changing me. Thank you for making me a new person.